Okay, this video is about fatigue mechanisms and recovery strategies. Specifically looking at the study design with regards to the multifactorial mechanisms, which means there's lots of factors that go into fatiguing an athlete. We're looking at fuel depletion, metabolic byproducts, and thermoregulation, so that's getting too hot. And we're also looking at the recovery strategies, namely passive and active recovery. But we'll also look at some other suitable recovery strategies to counteract fuel depletion, such as nutritional strategies to replace lost fuel. So this table shows us how fatigue is due to a number of different reasons, but what determines the fatigue mechanism is influenced by which is the dominant energy system, and also the type of activity we're doing, how much recovery the activity has, what type of recovery that an athlete can use. These all play a part in what will fatigue an athlete and how to best recover. So fatigue is caused by many factors, and the term used is multifactorial, which means that there are multiple reasons for athletes fatiguing, which fatigue, we get a decrease in performance. The main areas as outlined in the study design, we're going to look at fuel depletion, metabolic byproducts, and thermoregulation, or elevated body temperature. And we'll look at the strategies for managing these fatigue factors. So the first one, fuel depletion. ATP and CP, these are our chemical fuels in the muscle. These deplete after we begin exercising. We only have a couple of seconds of ATP stored in our muscles, so therefore we then rely on our ATP-CP system to provide ATP. And as you know, this energy system only lasts for about 10 to 12 seconds because the fuel, the petrol if you like, that fuels this energy system is creatine phosphate, or phosphate creatine, and this is in limited supply. We can only store around 10 to 15 seconds supply within the muscles. So for this particular energy system, ATP-CP, the biggest fatigue factor here is when we run out of fuel. So what does that mean? So this means that when we no longer have PC available to use for ATP production, it means that we then need to get our ATP from our anaerobic glycolysis system, particularly when we begin exercising, because we're in oxygen deficit, therefore we produce energy anaerobically. But as you can see, there is a rate difference between the ATP-CP system and the anaerobic glycolysis system. So once we've run out of PC, we must therefore use a different energy system to contribute ATP dominance. And as you can see, it's at a slower rate. It's still fast, but not as fast as the ATP-CP system. So how do we restore PC in order to increase the capacity of that really fast energy system, the ATP-CP system? Well, the best way is to use a passive recovery. So that is being motionless, just standing still. That gives your muscles the best chance to resynthesize PC. And for a full 100% replenishment, it takes around 10 minutes. However, to get 93% up to full PC stores, we're looking at about 90 seconds. So many athletes, when they, like for example AFL players, they run off the field, they'll sit on the bench and get a massage to help remove metabolic byproducts, and they will rest for around 90 seconds to allow full PC stores to replenish. This means that we can use that very fast energy system pretty close to its maximum capacity. So how does the body get PC, or creatine phosphate, or phosphocreatine? It comes from proteins, things like liver, and as well as supplementation. Athletes can take tablets like a vitamin pill, and that can help build stores of creatine to help with increasing PC stores. As you know, for the aerobic energy system, we use fats and carbohydrates, or glycogen. Our anaerobic system also uses glycogen, and if you remember back to the rate of energy that can be produced using glucose or carbohydrate, it's much faster than when we use fats. The rate is much slower. So glucose is very valuable because it allows our body to produce ATP fast using the anaerobic glycolysis system, or moderate using the aerobic system. This is in contrast to fat, where fat is much slower because it requires a lot more oxygen. So we only have a limited supply of stored glycogen in our liver and our muscles, and this lasts when we're intensely exercising. Our body has enough for about 60 to 90 minutes of exercise. Therefore, it's important that for endurance events that go beyond this duration, athletes consume high GI foods such as sports drinks and gels to top up their carbohydrate stores in the blood, their glucose stores in the blood, so that we can use that for producing a faster rate of energy via the aerobic or anaerobic glycolysis system. As you can see from the graph, as time progresses, our carbohydrate stores are reduced because our body prefers to use carbohydrates. However, as these start to decline, our body uses more fats to contribute to ATP. However, as we know, the fats produce energy much slower. So this is why athlete performance, it slows down after a couple of hours, and this is due to declined carbohydrate stores. And proteins are used as a last resort once fat stores and carbohydrate stores are practically gone, and this is used in a very last resort instance. So how do we combat this depletion of fuels, either the PC or the glycogen stores for the aerobics energy system? Well, we use foods or drinks throughout exercise, and our bodies prefer high GI foods. And what high GI means is that the food is closer to pure sugar, pure glucose, because this is easily absorbed into the blood. So athletes do this during extended activity, but it's also very important after training or after races, so that cells can be restocked with glycogen, and athletes only have a very small window to maximize the recovery process, to resynthesize ATP, to remove waste products, to fill up those glycogen stores so they're nice and full in the muscles, so that they can execute a quality subsequent session. And that window is only about 30 to 60 minutes. And it's also a good idea to consume protein, such as milk drinks, together with the carbohydrate. For instance, a banana smoothie is a classic recovery drink. It has both protein and carbohydrate. And what the protein does is it helps stimulate insulin, which removes the blood sugar out of the blood and into the cells to again maximize recovery. As you can see from this table, if you consume some high GI foods within an hour, you will, within the first 24 hours, you'll be 100% restored. And so that means the next day you can train in a quality way, because your glycogen stores within your muscle cells are full. Okay, moving on to metabolic byproducts. So this is another fatigue mechanism that occurs more in the anaerobic energy systems. This is because, if you recall, when we split ATP into energy, we get ADP and inorganic phosphates. When we get ADP, and this is associated mainly with the ATP-CP system, it interferes with the quickness, the velocity of contractions. When we get an accumulation of ADP, also associated with the ATP-CP system, that reduces the force of the contractions. So both these byproducts, if you like, occur when we split ATP, and associated with the ATP-CP system. Conversely, hydrogen ions, these are associated with the anaerobic glycolysis system. Now, this is, if you have a look at this graph over here, when we break down glucose via the anaerobic glycolysis system, we produce pyruvic acid. And when there's insufficient oxygen, so not enough oxygen available, pyruvic acid is converted into lactic acid. This is then broken down into lactate and hydrogen ions. As we've discussed before, it's not the lactate that causes the fatigue, because the lactate, in the presence of oxygen, is actually converted back into glucose, all right, and used for ATP. It's the hydrogen ions that cause the acidosis of the muscle, and that interferes with the muscle contractions. It inhibits the ability of the muscles to contract, and that is the cause of fatigue. The reason why we often still use lactate levels as an indicator for fatigue is because when lactic acid is broken up into lactate and hydrogen ions, if we have an accumulation of lactate, we've also got an accumulation of hydrogen ions. So if we can measure the amount of lactate in the blood, we can therefore predict that we've also got a heap of hydrogen ions that are accumulating, that are interfering with those muscle contractions. So the accumulation of hydrogen ions coincides with the accumulation of lactate. So that's why we still often refer to the lactate inflection point, because we know that the hydrogen ions accumulate at the same rate. So how do we combat this, or how do we manage what's an appropriate recovery strategy? To help remove metabolic byproducts, not just hydrogen ions, but the inorganic phosphates, we require an active recovery. So moving around, using the muscle pump to help get blood back up to the heart, which helps to also deliver more oxygen to the muscles, which helps oxidize the waste products, remove lactate, remove hydrogen ions, and remove carbon dioxide, and also prevents venous pooling by moving around. Other recovery strategies that also do this is anything that helps promote blood flow. So think of removing waste products. You need movement, you need blood flow. So active recovery does that, but also heat, massage. Heat helps dilate blood vessels, which helps promote blood flow. So massage is good. Heat is good. Contrast bathing, where you go from hot to cold, that helps with the vasodilation and vasoconstriction of the blood vessels, which helps, keep blood flow moving around to deliver oxygen and remove waste products such as the hydrogen ions and inorganic phosphates. Okay, finally, thermoregulation. This is body getting hot. As we know, if we get hot, our blood has to go to our skin to cool down. This takes important blood and oxygen away from our muscles, which will decline performance, because we know our muscles need oxygen to be able to produce energy, so aerobically, that is. So managing our body temperature is a really important strategy to combat fatigue. So ways of doing this is wearing appropriate clothing, cooling yourself down with water to keep your body temperature low. Of course, taking in fluids. If you are well hydrated, your body can more easily regulate its body temperature. If you are dehydrated, then you start exercising, you sweat, you lose more fluids. That makes your body it's more difficult for your body to regulate its body temperature. If you have a look at the table below, this shows the effect of sweat. So the more sweat we lose, the greater it impacts performance and can also lead to severe illness and injury. So some other strategies, having protective shade, also wearing appropriate clothing that breathes, that allows our body to cool down more easily. For example, you don't run in plastic because it traps body heat and heats you up. And post-exercise, submerging yourself into cool water or ice baths, that helps to significantly reduce body temperature. So all these strategies help to get the body back to pre-exercise levels as quickly as possible to promote recovery. Finally, other considerations are electrolytes. Things such as sodium, which is salt, potassium, and other minerals that are vital for cell processes to take place. We use these. These are found in sports drinks such as Gatorade, and it's an important consideration to ensure that the body can go through those chemical processes of producing ATP. It needs to have appropriate levels of salt and potassium. You might see runners or endurance athletes with sort of white crusty stuff on their clothing when they finish. Well, that's salt that's come out of their skin. This needs to be replaced, otherwise the body doesn't work properly. Okay, finally, really, this is a great table to show each of the energy systems: ATP, CP, anaerobic glycolysis, and the aerobic system, and what are the fatigue factors. So what is it that fatigues this system? Well, it's primarily PC depletion. I don't know why my colour is not going red, because fatigue is red, yeah, because it slows you down. For the anaerobic glycolysis system, so that's our 60 to 90 seconds, 100%, maximum. It's mainly our hydrogen ions. This is anaerobic glycolysis. Inorganic phosphate is mainly associated with the anaerobic glycolysis system also, but also actually the ATP-CP system. And for the aerobic, it is mainly fuel depletion, namely glycogen, because we only have about 60 to 90 minutes. And so once that runs out, our performance declines because fats require more oxygen, and it provides ATP at a much slower rate. The other significant fatigue factor mainly associated with the aerobic energy system is your thermoregulation, so body temperature. When you've been exercising a long time, muscle contractions heat up the body, so that can dehydrate you, which redistributes blood away from your muscle to cool you down, which limits oxygen supply to muscles, which therefore decreases performance. And here, let's go back to green. Or what about purple? So recovery. So we have a passive for our ATP-CP system. For anaerobic glycolysis, we want to promote blood flow. So we do this with either active recovery, we do it with massaging the muscles, keeping blood flow moving, or use water, use hot baths or contrast therapy to promote blood flow. For the aerobic system, because fuel depletion is the major fatigue factor in body temperature, having enough fluids, getting some sports drink into you, or having some gels to replace carbohydrates, and as well as the sodium and potassium. Of course, active recovery is better. Massage is also great, as well as water. So this is a great table. I'll get rid of all my marks for you to see each of the three energy systems, the fatigue and the recovery.